Hello, how's it going? Welcome to the channel, and I am here for an era review. So for this era review, I'll be reviewing the 1990s era of Dream Theater. Now, this is probably my favorite era of Dream Theater, and Dream Theater is one of those bands that really helped me get into progressive metal more and more. Um, I wouldn't say that they were my first progressive metal band because I was technically exposed to a couple progressive metal bands like a few years ago with bands like Haken and Leprous. But I was really only into a few songs by those bands. But Dream Theater was like really the first progressive metal band that really helped me get into this subgenre more, and it's become one of my favorite subgenres of metal for sure. So yeah, the 90s era of Dream Theater is probably my favorite era of this band. I just think that the majority of the stuff that I go back to from this band is in the 90s. Um, so we won't be including the debut album or anything. We're just going to be going from Images and Words all the way up to Metropolis Part 2. So with that being said, we of course got Images and Words. Now, this actually might be my favorite Dream Theater album, but I don't know. It might even be my favorite Dream Theater album. This album has many great songs on it, such as the classic Pull Me Under, which is, one of their biggest songs, of course, and it's one of my personal favorite Dream Theater songs of all time. I just really love the build-up at the beginning with, the intense drums and riffs that really lead up to the rest of the song. And, when you first listen to it, it's kind of unpredictable, and I think it's a really great song, and it pretty much embodies Dream Theater's overall sound, I think. And that song leads into Another Day, which is a more ballad-like song. And I think it's kind of weird how, Pull Me Under kind of abruptly transitions right over to Another Day. Like, it doesn't really, fade into that song in any way. It just kind of starts abruptly, which is kind of just a little gripe I have with this album, but Another Day is a really good song as well. I think this song is actually kind of emotional. I think this song, I could be wrong about this, but I think this song does mean something to one of the band members. I think I heard that somewhere. But yeah, this is a really good song, and yeah, I dig it. Take the Time is another good song. This is a song that I think has a nice flow to it, real nice energy to it, and I like the instrumentation and the vocals. Everything about it's really good. Surrounded, I think, is kind of an interesting song as well. This song kind of, goes into some ballad territory, but it also has its, energetic moments. This song is just very unique in its own way, and I think it's one of the more unique tracks on the album. And of course, Metropolis Part 1, this is another classic Dream Theater song. It's really good. Under the Glass Moon is really good as well. And Wait for Sleep is another ballad off this album. It's a shorter song. It's pretty much like the intro to the closing track to this album, which is Learning to Live, which I think is another great song and another one of my favorites, and kind of an underrated closing track from Dream Theater, I think. I just really love the instrumentation and the presentation with James's vocals. This song is just great. It's a pretty long song too, and it's not a song that you just want to listen to parts of. This is one of those songs that you want to listen to the whole thing, and I think it's a great album closer, and maybe even their best album closer. I think it's a great song. So Images and Words, definitely a great album, and like I said, I think it's Dream Theater's, or it might be Dream Theater's best. I don't know, but it's definitely a great album. But next up, we got their album Awake. Now, either this album or Images and Words is my favorite of Dream Theater's albums. I really like this album. This was my first Dream Theater album, and this was the album that really helped me get into the band. This album has many great songs on it, like 6 O'Clock. I mean, this is a great opening track. I just really dig everything about it. And Caught in the Web is really good. Innocence Faded, this is one of my favorites off this album. I really like the vocal presentation and the instrumentation, and I think it's actually kind of an underrated song, and I like it. And you know, uh, other great songs on this album, of course, like The Mirror and Lie. Now, Lie is one of their another one of their biggest songs. Um, Definitely a classic for sure. This song is just very raw, and the vocal delivery in this song is very, raspy and very, raw. I really like this song. It's another favorite of mine, you know, and I think this album has many other great songs on it, and yeah, like I said, Awake. I mean, it's definitely one of their best. Either this album or Images and Words is my favorite, and I think Awake is another great album for sure. All right, so next up we got their EP, A Change of Seasons, which I think is actually really good. It's really worth owning as a Dream Theater fan. Some might say that this is not a necessity for Dream Theater fans, but I would disagree with that. I think this is actually a really great release. The title track, I think, is one of the best Dream Theater songs of all time. It's a really long song, and it's a very there's many parts of the song that are very captivating, I think, and it's a great way to start the EP. And this EP also has some Led Zeppelin covers on it, and the covers are done fairly well, I think. I really like the covers. The covers are for The Rover, Achilles' Last Stand, and The Song Remains the Same, and these were some great choices to cover because these are some of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs, and, as you guys know, I'm also a Led Zeppelin fan, so yeah. I especially really like the way they covered Achilles' Last Stand because this is one of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs of all time. And yeah, this EP, Change of Seasons, it's actually really good. I definitely recommend it. And then we got Falling into Infinity. Now, I know there's a lot of people that really just don't like this album. There's a lot of people that say that this is one of the worst Dream Theater albums. I don't know if I would go that far. I would agree with this album being the worst of their 90s time. So yeah, with that being said, this album is probably my least favorite of Dream Theater's 90s time. But this album does have some good stuff on it, like You Not Me, which is very commercial, of course, but I think it's actually a pretty catchy song. I think it's very melodic. And Burning My Soul is another really good song. Trial of Tears is also a really good song as well. I mean, yeah, this album, they definitely stepped on some progressive rock territory. Kind of similar to Rush in a way, but I like this album. It's not one of my favorite Dream Theater albums, but I think it's a good one. I don't think it's one of their best works, but again, Falling into Infinity, I think it's a good album for sure. And lastly, of course, we got Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory. Now, this album is great. This might even be my third favorite Dream Theater album behind Awake and Images and Words, but even that's really difficult to establish. But this album, you get a lot of great stuff on this album, of course, such as Strange Deja Vu, and Spirit Carries On, and Dance of Eternity, which is an instrumental, probably one of their best instrumental tracks. This album just has a lot of great stuff on it, and you of course can't forget about the song Home as well. Another great song off this record. Yeah, this album definitely has a lot of interesting stuff on it. This might be a concept album. I'm not entirely sure about that. You can let me know if it is, but yeah, I think this album is great. I think it's better than Falling into Infinity, but yeah. So, Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory. It's a great album, and I think it's a good way to end the 90s era of Dream Theater. And of course, the next time that they would release music would be in the 2000s, of course, but yeah. But this is the 90s era, and again, it's probably my favorite era of Dream Theater. I think some of their best work has come from this era. Really, the only downfall of this era, or the only like misstep of this era, is Falling Into Infinity. But that's not even saying much, because I think that's still a really good album, but I think it's easily the weakest of this era. But I think it's a good album for what it is, though. But I mean, even the EP that they've released during this time is really good, you know. The title track, I mean, you can't skip this one. You just can't. It's actually really good. So that's my take on the 90s era of Dream Theater. I think this is their best era. So let me know what you guys think of this era of Dream Theater. What was your favorite era of Dream Theater? Was it the 90s, the 2000s, or maybe you're one of those people that like the 2010s era? But the 90s, this is the era that did it for me the most. So let me know what you guys think of my review for this era of Dream Theater. So thanks for watching, have a nice day, and take care.